What's up, everyone? It's no secret that Pat McAfee has dominated sports headlines over the last week. Many people are upset with Aaron Rodgers' appearances on his show, and they're even saying that ESPN needs to remove him from the channel. But this video is going to explain the business behind this deal, including why ESPN will never do that, and why Pat McAfee himself shouldn't let ESPN do that. Now, it all started when New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers made a comment on the Pat McAfee show about Jimmy Kimmel, hoping the Jeffrey Epstein list doesn't come out. And it ended with McAfee accusing a high-level ESPN executive of sabotage. Here's a quick recap of exactly what happened. During his regularly scheduled weekly appearance on the Pat McAfee show, Aaron Rodgers said Jimmy Kimmel was hoping the Epstein list doesn't come out. Jimmy Kimmel then responded on Twitter by calling Rodgers, and I quote, an asshole, saying it was nonsense and threatening the NFL quarterback with a lawsuit if he continued. McAfee apologized the next day, claiming it was just a joke and that Rodgers was saying it in response to Kimmel calling him a tinfoil hatter. This set the internet on fire. Some people thought Disney CEO Bob Iger should step in and kick Aaron Rodgers off the show, while others said that it was fair game because Jimmy Kimmel makes a living telling jokes. Sports media columnist Andrew Marchand of the New York Post then released an article essentially saying that Pat McAfee's early numbers at ESPN aren't all that great. Now, you can read the full article online, but the gist of it is that McAfee is being handed an average audience of 583,000 viewers from Stephen A. Smith's show First Take, but he only maintains 300,000 viewers throughout his show. That's a 48% drop from the audience that he's being handed. Marchand also noted that McAfee's show on ESPN is down 12% compared to the same window last year. That was SportsCenter. And Marchand also said that McAfee rarely finishes contracts. Here's a direct quote from the article. He said, "Can McAfee last in the Disney universe? McAfee never finishes contracts. He failed to with FanDuel, DAZN, BetOnline, SiriusXM, and WWE, to name a few. So on McAfee lasting the full 5 years on the ESPN contract, put us down for the under." Now, the viewership numbers that Marchand used in his article are public knowledge, but they didn't include Pat's viewership numbers on YouTube, which is obviously a big part of the equation. So Pat got upset, mentioning the next day that ESPN executive Norby Williamson was trying to sabotage his show by leaking misleading numbers to Andrew Marchand. Pat said, "There are some people actively trying to sabotage us from within ESPN. More specifically, I believe, Norby Williamson is the guy who is attempting to sabotage our program. I'm not 100% sure. That is just seemingly the only human that has information, and then somehow that information gets leaked, and it's wrong. And then it sets a narrative of what our show is. Are we just going to combat that from a rat every single time? I don't know." Now look, the Norby Williamson line was shocking, to say the least. Many people who are dialed into the sports media side of things know that Williamson is often accused of leaking numbers outside of ESPN, particularly for shows he doesn't like. Norby Williamson was also directly involved in some of ESPN's highest profile departures over the years. We're talking about people like Bill Simmons, Dan Le Batard, and Michelle Beadle. But there's a reason why none of those people took a shot at Norby Williamson while they were still at ESPN. Norby Williamson is one of the longest tenured employees at the network. He started in the ESPN mailroom in 1985, and he now oversees all of ESPN's event and studio productions, including SportsCenter and all of the company's football content. That didn't stop Pat McAfee, though. Pat posted a clip from Scarface on Twitter the next day, essentially insinuating that ESPN needs him more than he needs them. McAfee then doubled down a few days later, saying he has a great relationship with executives like Bob Iger, Jimmy Pitaro, and Burke Magnus, but said he still doesn't like Norby Williamson. Now, this behavior would typically be an automatic firing for anyone at ESPN, but McAfee is in a super unique position because A, he doesn't need ESPN, and B, ESPN needs him. Many of you guys will remember that ESPN released its financials for the first time ever last year. The numbers told us that the worldwide leader in sports is still printing cash. They reported $16 billion in 2022 revenue and nearly $3 billion in profit. For context, that's significantly less revenue than the $40 billion in revenue that Disney's entertainment division, streaming, TV networks, and movie studios, brought in last year. But those divisions, particularly streaming, are bleeding cash. And ESPN brought in more profit last year than all of those divisions combined. But that doesn't tell the entire story. We all know the cable business is dying. More than 30 million households in the United States alone have dropped cable over the last decade. And ESPN's business of collecting affiliate fees isn't nearly as good as it once was. Now, ESPN has tried to offset this decline by launching its own streaming service, ESPN Plus. That service now has 26 million subscribers, which sounds great. But they also lost quarterly subscribers for the first time ever last year. And many people are only signing up for the service because it's essentially free when you sign up for the Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu bundle. Now, this is precisely why ESPN signed McAfee to a 5-year, $85 million contract in the first place. McAfee brings ESPN exactly what they are missing: a digital-first product that specifically targets a younger generation of sports fans. I'm talking about people ages 18 to 45. So you can say what you want about McAfee. I get it. He's loud, he's brash, and he certainly isn't everyone's cup of tea. But he has also built a massive audience over the last few years, independently, and that doesn't happen by accident. This drama is also par for the course with ESPN. They have tried to expand their audience several times by partnering with edgier brands. Remember Barstool Van Talk? Only for ESPN to cancel those contracts when those edgy brands started acting, well, edgy. My point is that this is what ESPN signed up for. There is now more sports content available than ever before. I'm talking about YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, podcasts. These mediums have eaten into ESPN's business and made shows like SportsCenter that much less valuable. That's why Pat McAfee feels invincible. He doesn't think ESPN needs him. He knows that ESPN needs him. But that also doesn't mean that ESPN doesn't provide him a lot of value, too. It's essential to remember that McAfee's deal with ESPN is a licensing deal. That means he still owns all of the content and intellectual property. He still pays all of his employees, and he himself is ultimately responsible for the reputation of his show. But it also means that ESPN is helping Pat McAfee grow an asset that he will own long term. Think about it this way. McAfee went from being only on YouTube, where you have to go out of your way to find his show, to being on ESPN, a cable channel in over 70 million households in the United States alone, including virtually every bar, restaurant, and hotel. ESPN has also been promoting McAfee's content to their 100 million plus followers on social media. McAfee's contract includes a weekly spot on College Game Day, viewed by an average of 2 million people each week. They also routinely build him a custom set to host his weekly show at college campuses nationwide. And McAfee recently hosted alternate telecasts on ESPN2 for the Rose Bowl and National Championship game. All of those things, plus others, provide tremendous value to Pat McAfee. But more importantly, they align the incentives between the two parties. ESPN gets to attract a younger audience as it tries to transition its business from cable to streaming. And McAfee, well, he gets to expand the size of his audience over the next 5 years while making $85 million. So yeah, ESPN is going to let McAfee bend the rules. He maintains ownership of the show and gets to drop the occasional F-bomb on live television. But that's just the way it's going to be. Not necessarily because that's how people want it to be, but the money incentives are too strong for this partnership to end anytime soon.